Salut, YouTube hunters. Brad Goodspeed here. Okay, so recently I posted a short teaser video that I'm going to be releasing later on in the year. I released a lot of promos this year to promote my hunt. All this footage came from one shoot that we did. That's why there's only the same 3 people in almost all the promos. Because we went out into the woods one day, took along a camera. My gorgeous wife was my director of photography. And, I've used that footage every single way I can think of, over and over and over again. The reason I didn't put it up for public consumption yet, beyond YouTube anyways, is that the footage was all shot last year during the summer, and here in Toronto, this is nothing like summer right now. Not even spring. In fact, it's a lot more like my own personal version of hell, the cold kind. Anyways, in the meantime, I had a number of comments from this video and from one of the previous ones I did with people asking about the editing process and how to put this together. Now, I'm not calling what I'm doing here a tutorial, because doing a full-out step-by-step tutorial for something like this would take a really long time, and it's maybe a little bit too complex a process to describe in video format. But for people who have sort of had some interest in getting to this kind of level of video production, what I wanted to do was just sort of detail some of the steps that I take without showing you an exact how-to, and see if maybe that stimulates some people to kind of teach themselves a few of these skills. None of this is really overly difficult. The key piece here is the use of Adobe After Effects software. Again, this is what I do for a living, so there's some stuff in here that wouldn't be elementary when first opening up After Effects. But if you're interested, maybe get the software and teach yourself a few things, and ask some questions. There's some great websites where there are a lot of tutorials on After Effects. Here are some of the steps. This is the original footage. The only thing I've done to this footage here is slow it down a little bit, which I did in Final Cut Pro before I even brought it into After Effects. As you can see, it was a sunny day. If you want your footage to look like nighttime, the best thing to do is to shoot in the daytime in a shaded area where there won't be any extreme highlights, and then apply the process that I'm about to show you. So what I did here is some basic color correction. I basically brought up the blues a little bit, brought down the reds, I made the blacks much more severe, brought down the highlights. These are the steps that you would have to learn in After Effects, but none of this is overly complicated. This is a basic color correction pass to make it look like nighttime, and there's many tutorials around on how to do that. Then I added some basic noise to the picture, which if you look carefully, I don't know if the YouTube compression will allow you to see it, but I basically made the image look a little noisier, a little less clean. Now, this is something called a vignette, which I like to add, well, in many different situations, but especially to footage that's supposed to look scary or claustrophobic. What it basically does is darken the corners of the image, leaving the middle completely untouched. And then the next thing I did was a edge softness pass with another filter on it called a bleach bypass, which basically makes the image look a little more silvery, I would say. And as you can see in the corners of the image, it's a little more blurred, quite a bit more blurred than in the center of the image, which also heightens the sort of claustrophobic feel. What I did next, and this is hardly perceptible, there it is, you can see I've kind of taken the center part of the image and just had it wiggle up and down, which is something it's fairly easy to do in After Effects, but it creates kind of this frenetic kind of thing. And then what I did is I took another sort of copy of the image and I adjusted the levels so that all we saw was the highlights, the brightest parts of the image, the top of the guy on the left's head, the shirt of the middle guy, and the dress of the girl on the right. And what I do is apply a blur to that layer, and also you can see I have it kind of doing this kind of tweaking thing. And then I add that on top of the rest of the image, and it creates this glow around the highlights. You can see the top of his head, his shirt, and her dress are now kind of glowing and have kind of a ghastly feel to the image now. So then next up I applied an overlay of some World War I footage that I had used in my documentary. This is just to give it a kind of strange feel. I basically just applied that over top of the image at only 27% opacity. And then the final video effect is something called film damage, which is not a single effect but a series of them. I use a filter called Magic Bullet. It adds noise, it adds like a flickering effect, like a gate weave, like as if it's an old piece of film that's weaving back and forth in the projector. It adds junk on top, little kind of splotches that used to happen in old film projections, just to give it a much older, damaged feel. So now on to the sound. First thing I did was take this piece of music, which is part of a stock collection that I bought quite a while ago that I've used in a bunch of different videos. And then I took a section of that and played it backwards, which sounds like this. Playing music backwards is a great way to A, make it sound strange and unsettling, and B, avoid any kind of copyright problems. I'm only using small sections of pieces of music as samples and reversing them, and although I do own that piece. The next thing is something called the Pistol Poem, which is a famous spooky piece of audio that was recorded a long time ago. I'm sure you can Google it and find out the origin. And that I played. It sounds like this.
2, 3, 4, 5.
And I just reversed it like before. And then finally I took this little piece of music from my favorite horror movie of all time, The Shining. And I reversed it as well. And when you mix all the pieces together, you have the soundtrack for the promo. And that's the whole thing. That's how it was done. I'll let you watch the whole thing one more time. So that's how you make a spooky promo out of daytime footage. You know, you don't have to shoot at night because it's really hard to shoot footage at night unless you have all kinds of lights and you have a real big skill set on lighting. And I mean, shooting during the day is just much more natural, especially if you're shooting outdoors. Better to make it look like night and then, you know, add a bunch of different effects and Bob's your uncle. So that's how I made this promo. Again, that wasn't a tutorial. It was more just sort of a illustration of how I put these things together and what's possible if you just teach yourself some sort of basic video editing skills and some basic After Effects stuff. I know that it might seem like it's really out of reach for some people, but I see on YouTube a lot of people are playing around with video editing software. I mean, way more people know how to edit than just 10 years ago. Thanks to YouTube and people with their own channels, and you know, these skills aren't that far away from your grasp, not as far as you might think anyways. So, you know, if you have After Effects already, or if you are confident you'll be able to acquire it, play around a little. Don't follow the exact steps that I did, but play around with your footage, see what you can do, and best of luck to you. Happy haunting.